The woman who stepped out of the luxury car drew everyone's attention as she walked straight towards me. She then said, "I've come to pick you up in your car," and stood close to me, which caused a big stir around us. Joseph's mouth was agape. "Ah, who is that woman?" It wasn't me who answered Joseph's question, but the stunning, model-like beauty Jessica. "My name is Stephen, and I'm 30 years old. I work at a design and engineering company. Today is our high school reunion. It's the first time we've ever had one, but out of nowhere, an invitation had arrived. The sender was Joseph. We met in our first year of high school and pushed each other to aim for a prestigious university. We spent our afternoons studying in the library or study rooms, half studying and half chatting. Joseph and I especially loved cars and often debated about our dream cars. However, we went separate ways in our second year of high school. My father suddenly passed away due to illness. Although I could have tried to apply for university with scholarships, I decided to start working to support my struggling mother. So I got permission from the school to get a part-time job. The part-time job was at the design and engineering company where I now work, and I found the work there very interesting. During high school, they only let me do simple tasks like tracing someone else's designs or doing basic measurements. Eager to become fully competent, I decided to join the company full-time right after high school instead of going to college. When I told Joseph about this, he was upset. He said we had promised to apply for the university together, but my situation had changed drastically. Since then, I haven't been in touch with Joseph at all. I know he successfully got into the prestigious university we aimed for. It's been 12 years since then. I was genuinely curious about how he's been, so I decided to attend the reunion since the invitation was from Joseph. It seemed he was the organizer. I arrived early at the venue and looked for Joseph. I found him right away. Even in high school, he was tall, well-built, and handsome with sharp features. Today, he was wearing an expensive-looking suit, looking even more impressive. As I approached Joseph, he noticed me. "Hey, it's Stephen, isn't it?" He walked towards me with wide eyes. "Joseph, long time no see. How have you been?" I greeted him as I handed over the participation fee, and he nodded with a smile. "I've been well, but really busy. The company I joined after graduating is extremely demanding. But how should I put it? I feel like I'm really contributing to the country, and it's very fulfilling." Contributing to the country? That's quite grand. He works for a famous company that everyone knows. That's impressive. Graduating from such a prestigious university and working at a top company. When I said that, Joseph puffed out his chest a little. "Yeah, I'm doing my best. You are a high school graduate, right? I heard your dad passed away suddenly. That's tough, such a waste of your talent." I smiled wryly. "I'm doing my best at my current company too, but I'm sure my efforts seem small compared to Joseph's." I didn't say much and changed the subject. "By the way, we used to talk a lot about cars back in the day. You always wanted a foreign car." When I mentioned this, Joseph's face lit up. "Oh, you have to hear this. I finally got my dream car." It was the European car brand that Joseph had always admired the most. Excitedly, he pulled out his phone and showed me a picture. "Look at this. The luxury and dignity of this style. Isn't it amazing? You can't help but fall in love with it." I nodded as I looked at the phone. I prefer domestic cars, but the overwhelming presence of foreign cars is undeniably impressive. But you know, the maintenance costs are really high. I don't feel comfortable taking it to just any shop for inspections, so I end up going to the manufacturer, which is expensive, and repairs with foreign cars. Sometimes the parts are discontinued, so getting original parts can be tough. It seemed like he had hit his stride. Maybe the challenges of maintaining it are part of the appeal. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jessica. "It's someone from work," so I need to take this, I said to Joseph and answered the call. Someone from work. Hey, it's your day off, right? Are you working for a sweatshop or something? He teased. Oh. I ignored Joseph and took the call, but Jessica was silent. Hello, can you hear me? What's up? Puzzled by the lack of response, I spoke again. In the background, more classmates had arrived, and Joseph continued bragging about his car. Are you enjoying the reunion? Jessica finally broke the silence. Well, to be honest, not really, I admitted. I had come to talk to Joseph, but after just a bit of conversation, I was already exhausted. He probably didn't mean any harm, but all he talked about were his achievements. I'm sure he worked incredibly hard to get into that prestigious university, and his current job at a major company is demanding. His salary is probably high, and he owns a car that everyone dreams of. For a moment, I silently watched Joseph, who had changed a bit. Then Jessica said, "All right, I'll come pick you up," and hung up. What? I stared at my phone in disbelief. Why did Jessica call me in the first place? While I was puzzled, Joseph spoke to me again. Sorry, I've been talking about myself. What car are you driving now? I replied that I drive a domestic car. Joseph continued, compact cars have low maintenance costs, right? What kind are you driving? Show me. I think sporty-looking wagon types are nice, even if they're just compact cars. Joseph, what's happened to you? I furrowed my brows and looked at him, making him uneasy. Sure, your car is cool, but every car has its own appeal. I prefer domestically made cars. When I said that, Joseph scratched his head awkwardly. Sorry, I was actually really looking forward to seeing you, Stephen. Seeing you brought back all those high school memories. I felt betrayed when you didn't go to T University with me, even though I understand why. I thought if you had come with me, you could have had a car like this too. I sighed. I'm sorry too. Maybe if I had explained things better back then, you wouldn't have felt that way. I found the work at the company where I had my part-time job really interesting and wanted to learn through practice instead of just studying. As I trailed off, a high-end domestic car pulled up outside the venue. That alone caused a bit of a stir, but when everyone saw the woman stepping out of the driver's seat, they were stunned. With a small face, thin lips, a sharp high nose, and almond-shaped double eyelids, her slightly brown wavy hair, her well-proportioned figure, and long slender legs peeking out from her skirt, the woman who stepped out of the luxury car drew everyone's attention. She walked straight towards me and said, "I've come to pick you up," causing a huge commotion around us. Joseph's mouth was agape. Who is that woman? It wasn't me who answered Joseph's question but the stunning model-like beauty. Jessica. My name is Jessica. I'm Stephen's assistant, she said, making a graceful bow. I held my head in my hands. Jessica took my hand and, insisting, "Let's go," tried to lead me back the way she came. Jessica, sorry, I just started to enjoy myself, I said, stopping her. Jessica widened her eyes. Just had a misunderstanding with an old friend. We just made up, so sorry, I explained. Jessica smiled warmly. It's fine if you're having fun. Can I hang around and wait? If I wasn't enjoying myself, it would be rude to keep her waiting after she came to pick me up. I was about to suggest she head back when Joseph stepped forward. If you'd like, your assistant can join us. Jessica's face lit up. Really? Her smile was dazzling, nearly knocking everyone out. It's a buffet, so if you pay the fee, Joseph said, glancing at me with a grin. I silently took out my wallet and paid for Jessica. You are not really my assistant, and that car is a company car, I said as I handed over the fee. Jessica pouted. Hey, I was trying to make you look good. I chuckled. Jessica continued. Why not? You're going to be the next president. When you become president, I'll be your assistant, and you'll use that car." The room buzzed at her words. People started asking about my current situation, so I reluctantly explained that I had been working hard at the company where I had my high school part-time job, eventually being considered for the next president role. Jessica looked at me with a sly smile, but I tried not to involve her too much in my story. Joseph then said, "I see you are working hard too, Stephen. Sorry again for everything." "No worries. I wanted to tell you everything back then. After we fell out in high school, I was a bit stubborn perhaps. Can we hang out more often?" Joseph nodded with a smile. As the reunion ended, I went for a drive with Jessica. Behind the wheel, she focused straight ahead, concentrating on driving. Watching her profile, I recalled how we met. I met Jessica in my second year of high school. It was a few months after I started my part-time job at the company during the summer. During the summer vacation, a fourth-grade girl began coming to the office. It was Jessica, the daughter of Mr. Brown, the company president. Back then, the company was very small and family-like, and employees' children would often come by on days off. Jessica was there almost every day. She seemed to enjoy watching the adults work. She took a particular liking to me and would watch me work closely, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. A 10-year-old girl hanging around didn't seem like anything romantic, but Jessica was quite a mature girl. She would straightforwardly say, "I want to marry you in the future." When I brushed it off, she would get angry, saying, "I'm serious." The employees teased me, saying, "You'll marry the president's daughter and become the next president," which made a high school kid like me feel a bit awkward. However, when I graduated from high school and officially joined the company as a full-time employee, things changed. I convinced Mr. Brown, the president, to implement 3D CAD. I taught myself 3D modeling and incorporated it into our design and engineering projects, which increased our clients. As the company grew, it became harder for children to come and go, and I stopped seeing Jessica. Around that time, self-study was incredibly challenging, but I enjoyed every bit of it. I loved that kind of learning. My desire to go to college, which I had once given up, rekindled. Of course, I kept that desire in check because I was already working, but I wondered if I could at least take some classes to learn about the areas where self-study had its limits. Going to college now seemed impractical. Still, I wanted to attend university one day. Amidst this internal struggle, Mr. Brown approached me. "Stephen, have you considered going to college?" I was stunned when Mr. Brown, the president, said, "Thanks to your hard work, the company has grown significantly. I know you've been looking into universities because you want to study more. How about taking a leave of absence and attending college for 4 years? I want to support your aspirations," he said with a warm smile. I was moved to tears. I asked for some time to think it over. It was an incredibly generous offer, but I didn't want to leave the company short-handed for 4 years. After doing some research, I found a night school at a university. Fortunately, there was a night school within commuting distance that had the program I wanted to study. When I consulted with Mr. Brown, he laughed at my modesty. So, I enrolled in night school and studied to my heart's content. During this time, the company accommodated my schedule by adjusting overtime and weekend work, which was a huge help. I was determined to repay this kindness and continue to work hard. After graduating from university, I actively incorporated the new skills I had learned into my work. These new skills were particularly effective in large projects, allowing us to offer proposals from various angles, even in urban development. So, as it turns out, I'm not just a high school graduate, as Joseph mentioned. I forgot to explain this to Joseph, but I'm sure we'll have another chance to meet one day. While I was busy applying my learned skills and helping the employees acquire them, Mr. Brown invited me to dinner. Mr. Brown had treated me like his own son since high school, and we often had meals together discussing various topics. Each time, I thought it was just another usual dinner that day, but when I arrived at the restaurant, there was someone else at the table besides Mr. Brown. It was Jessica, all grown up. Seeing me, she blushed and looked down. She had transformed from an assertive elementary school girl into a composed and stunningly beautiful young woman, and I hesitated to approach her. When I cautiously approached the table, Mr. Brown gestured for me to sit. I still vividly remember nodding nervously when he asked if I remembered his daughter. When I nodded, Jessica's face lit up like a blooming flower. Despite the initial tension, the dinner progressed pleasantly. Mr. Brown kept glancing at Jessica, and each time she would look down until finally, "Dad," she said hesitantly with a knowing smile. Mr. Brown excused himself to the restroom, leaving us alone. The tension between us increased. "I've wanted to see you for so long." Hearing those words from the now beautiful Jessica made my heart leap. "Do you remember when I was in elementary school? I asked you to marry me?" She looked up at me with a flushed face and pleading eyes. I nodded awkwardly like a robot. Jessica took a deep breath and said the words she had prepared. "I've loved you even when we couldn't see each other. Will you date me with marriage in mind?" The words, spoken rapidly as if exhaling a long-held breath, pierced my heart. I met Jessica when she was still in elementary school, during my sensitive middle and high school years. While others were developing crushes on classmates or teachers, she had carefully nurtured the feelings she had since she was 10. I was deeply moved by that. She had kept her desire to see me suppressed all these years. She had heard about my hard work at the company and decided not to interfere. She had promised her father, Mr. Brown, to focus on her studies until she graduated from university. She worked hard to improve herself, worrying that I might marry someone else in the meantime. Once she was close to graduating and had a job offer from her father's company, she finally arranged to meet me today. Hearing this, I couldn't dismiss her feelings. When Mr. Brown returned from the restroom and said, "I'd feel at ease if it were you, Stephen," with a warm smile, I made up my mind. Definitely, I'd love to date you, Jessica, whose long-held feelings had finally been acknowledged, blushed deeply and shed tears. I knew I had to honor her sincere feelings. I made up my mind to do just that. As we drove, reminiscing about the past, these memories became precious parts of my life. I wondered if I was good enough to deserve Jessica's genuine feelings. Looking at her profile, I said, "Can we take a break?" indicating the parking lot of a nearby park. "Of course," she replied, and the car slowly pulled into the parking lot. It was a fairly large park with a central area full of large playground equipment and a walking path around it. At the end of the path was a small hill with a gazebo. Jessica and I began walking toward the gazebo. "The stars, they're beautiful," she said, looking up. I saw a sky full of stars. Maybe it was because we were in a place with few streetlights or because of the clear winter air, but there seemed to be more stars than usual. "Yeah, they're beautiful," I responded, and Jessica chuckled. Her face seemed to shine more than usual. "I love you, Jessica." As I looked at Jessica's profile, I couldn't help but murmur those words. Jessica blushed deeply. "What, all of a sudden? I'm happy though." I laughed softly. "Well, I was just reminiscing, and I wondered if I was good enough to deserve your sincere feelings. It made me realize I hadn't expressed even half of what I feel. I'm not very good at romance. After graduating high school, I worked tirelessly while attending night school. Time flew by like a storm. During that time, I had no romantic interests and was entirely focused on work. Once I start working, I get completely absorbed. I'm probably the most boring guy ever. Could someone like Jessica, who is 7 years younger than me, really be satisfied with a guy like me? A dull man like me with a beautiful woman who attracts everyone's attention? I don't think we match. Still, I don't want to let Jessica go. I'm afraid you'll realize someday that there are better guys out there." Jessica's face lit up. "No way, Stephen. You really thought that?" She looked incredibly happy for some reason. I had just confessed my insecurities, feeling completely pathetic. "What are you worried about? I have only ever loved you since I was 10. Jessica looked at me as if waiting desperately for my response. "Well, that's just it. There are so many great guys out there, but you only see me. I'm really happy. But for example, Joseph, the guy I talked about today, he's smart, works at a big company, drives a foreign car, is tall and good-looking. He's better than me in every way. Someone as beautiful, kind and cheerful as you would be a great match for a guy like him." I knew I was being self-deprecating. I thought Jessica might be disappointed, but she widened her eyes in surprise. "Wow, Stephen, you really have low self-esteem. I didn't know that," she said. I tilted my head in confusion. "Well then, let me tell you how exceptional and wonderful you are," Jessica said with a chuckle, raising her index finger. "First of all, you're incredibly hardworking. The reason our company has grown so much is entirely thanks to you. My father talks about it all the time." Her words made me feel a bit embarrassed. "Secondly, you're really smart. You could have gone to the university if you had wanted to." I tried to be modest, but my mock exam results in my first year of high school did show I was within reach. Jessica continued to list my good qualities until I blushed and told her to stop. "Stop. That's enough," I said, my face turning red. Honestly, I was thrilled. It felt great to know Jessica saw me in such a positive light. Jessica looked dissatisfied but said, "Okay, then just one more thing." She gazed at me intently. "The reason I fell in love with you was seeing your serious expression as you expertly controlled the mouse and keyboard to create designs on the computer. It looked like magic, and I fell for you." I was a bit surprised to learn that young Jessica was drawn to such a seemingly mundane aspect of me. "If Joseph is like a foreign car, then you're like a domestic car," she continued. I was puzzled by this analogy. "You're gentle and kind, which makes you more wonderful than someone flashy like Joseph." At that moment, I decided there was no time like the present. I took out the box I always carry in my pocket. Jessica looked surprised. "Thank you for understanding me better than I do myself. Jessica, you're beautiful, you work hard to stay fit, and you're kind and strong inside. To me, you're the perfect woman." Jessica listened without moving. "Honestly, I sometimes feel like I'm not worthy enough for you, but I don't want to lose you to anyone else. I want to be by your side forever. Will you marry me?" When our relationship started, it was Jessica who took the courage to confess her feelings. She had loved me for years. I always knew I wanted to propose to her myself. How long had I been carrying this ring? It was just an ordinary day when I was wandering around the city alone. The moment I realized I wanted to marry Jessica, my feet unconsciously led me into a jewelry store. As I looked at the sparkling rings, I found one that would look perfect on Jessica, and bought it. I carried that ring with me everywhere so that I could propose at any moment. It's embarrassing, isn't it? I have always wanted to marry you, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Eventually, I started feeling insecure, thinking there might be better men out there for you. I'm glad that I finally decided to propose before anyone else could take you away," I said, holding out the box with the ring. I was anxious that she might not take it. "But really, are you sure I'm good enough?" she asked, making me almost stumble. "What? Now you're the one who's worried." "Why?" I asked, flustered. Jessica looked down. "Because my confession, I asked my father for help." I understood what she was trying to say. "It has nothing to do with Mr. Brown. I genuinely love you." This was something I could say with absolute confidence. Tears welled up in Jessica's eyes. Then she gently took the small box from my hand. Jessica slowly opened the small box and upon seeing its contents murmured, "Wow, it's beautiful. It's not just about the price, but I splurged quite a bit to honor Jessica's long-held feelings. I couldn't imagine any ring other than this one, which perfectly matched Jessica's image." She gazed at the ring intently and slowly took it out. "And then here." She handed the ring to me. I took it and placed it on her finger. She held up her left hand with the ring now glittering on her ring finger against the starry sky. "I'm so happy. It's so beautiful, even more beautiful than this starry sky." In that moment she looked more beautiful than ever. Just as foreign cars and domestic cars each have their own unique appeal, I realized I had qualities I hadn't acknowledged. Jessica had discovered those qualities in me. Although Jessica is undeniably a beautiful and charming woman, I believe I know her inner beauty better than anyone. I hope to cherish what I have now and continue to improve in areas where I am lacking. I want to further enrich my work life and eventually acquire the car I've always dreamed of. Most importantly, I want to live happily with Jessica. I have many dreams and sometimes I worry if I can achieve them all, but with Jessica by my side, I believe we can achieve any dream. Eventually, looking up at the star-filled sky, Jessica and I gently held hands.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, But we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, "I'm moving to the sales department soon." If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. "Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it." On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. "It's still working hours." Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. "Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived." I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. "They look good." "What are you talking about?" "These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one?" As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.